Thanks so much for the invitation. Also, disclaimer of bias. Charles and I actually went to the same high school, and yeah, go Jaybirds in Jefferson City, Missouri. So we're thrilled to be here. My name is Adam Flores. I'm the manager of community engagement and education at the St. Louis Shakespeare Festival. I'm also an actor in this year's main stage production, so I'm kind of wearing two hats. One as representative of the Shakespeare Festival, and then secondary as an actor in this production of Twelfth Night that we're doing. I'll let you all introduce yourselves and just say your names, pronouns, roles, and where you're from originally, and then I will kind of do a large overview if that's fair.
Okay, do we
You can touch it or move it.
Okay, hi. Okay, so my name is Gabriela Sacker. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am playing Viola or Viola in our production of Twelfth Night. And I am originally from Havana, Cuba. And I also have lived in Puerto Rico for a long, long time. So I'm a Cuban Rican.
I'm Jasmine Cherie Rush. I go by she, her pronouns. I play Olivia in this production, and I'm from Connecticut, but I'm based in Chicago.
So the St. Louis Shakespeare Festival has been doing free performances of Shakespeare in Forest Park just over the way for over 20 years now. And every year we're trying to bring something new, something interesting to the park, to the experience, so that you can experience a Shakespearean play that is, 400 years old, but in some way that is fresh. And this year we were really excited that we invited director Lisa Portes, who is the head of directing at DePaul University in Chicago, to come down and and direct our production. And one of the first things that she brought to us was this idea of a production of Twelfth Night that was set in Miami, in current day Miami. This becomes really interesting because the beginning of Shakespeare's play of Twelfth Night begins with a boat crash, a boat wreck, shipwreck is the word, and then siblings being separated, and immediately that sparked for Lisa a conversation about immigration and refugee status of people trying to get to a new land, and their boat falls apart, and they have to find themselves in a new land that is something new and different. The other part of this that became really interesting to Lisa is that Twelfth Night has the most music of any of the Shakespearean plays that there are. There are more songs in Twelfth Night than there are in any other Shakespeare play. So that opened up a lot of doors for there to be music and opportunities to bring that to life. We have a live band on stage, which is also very exciting, and they play underscore, but then also play songs throughout the production. So those two things kind of melded themselves and became really exciting for us as a festival to put on. And then one of the things that we're here to talk to you about today is then the process by which that after that casting has been decided, or after that concept has been decided, how the kind of casting comes together and how we decide who's playing what role. There's now a lot of specificity that is different than just, I think you're the prettiest, so then you get the role, right? There becomes a lot more conversation that develops around that. And so then we have these casting choices that become very specific to the story that is being told, which is also kind of why we're here to talk about these two fantastic actors and kind of their journey to these roles. So can we start with you, Jazzy, and talk a little bit about our version of Olivia and sort of the inspiration that it is, and then sort of how you're finding opportunities to bring the show to light with what Lisa's vision of this version of Olivia is.
Absolutely. I'm just going to hold this.
Yeah, do what you want.
Because I don't want to throw out my voice for tonight.
Yep.
So Olivia in Twelfth Night is a countess. So she's not necessarily a princess or a queen, but she is of high status. In the world of our play, because there's really no one with more status than her, she is the queen. And we found even after this last opening weekend, I've had girls come up to me and be like, you were the queen, you were the princess, which I think is very important, especially in the casting conversation. Me as a Black woman representing somebody of such high status in this world, and having these young girls come up to me and see me as such and then see themselves as such. Our version of Olivia, our director Lisa, was completely inspired by Beyonce. which is perfect because Beyonce is, in my life, my queen mother, and I look up to her for everything. So it wasn't hard to, well, Beyonce, big shoes to fill, but it wasn't hard to understand what that vision meant. And even further than that, our director wanted this to also be a gender expressive and gender fluid production because we have an array of genders within our cast. We have a few non-binary people, and we have a trans person as well. And so my love interest in the show, Sebastian, is played by a trans actor, lovely, lovely human. And our director was like, well, what if, in this production, if Orsino, who is the guy trying to get Olivia, but Olivia keeps denying, what if the reason for that is that Olivia is grappling with her own sexuality, and she doesn't really understand why she doesn't love this man who wants to love her? Why can't she just love him back? It's because she's grappling with who she is on her own. And I thought that was something that we needed to bring into the story as well, because I think now a lot of people feel more comfortable to express and explore their sexuality if they never have before. So we have this Beyonce character who is showing people that it's okay to be a little confused and it's okay to live with an open heart and be fabulous in it all. So yeah, that's kind of the direction that I've taken Olivia, and I've had a lot of fun being expressive in Beyonce ways while also staying very true to that curiosity and finding what it means to be queer for this woman who, in our world, we talked about the confines that women of high status might feel and being able to express themselves freely. And I've had a lot of fun figuring out what that means and what moments to express myself. But then when I'm around people who are from my court or from my house, having to maybe tighten up a little bit and not show who I am, but then being a little more free when the person I'm interested in comes along. So it's been a really, really fun journey, and a journey that I did not think I would be taking playing Olivia.
And also too, there's a sort of, the music is so important in 12th Night that like having you as Beyonce provides its own kind of soundtrack of musicality and interest that comes from just how you move on stage is being informed by the music that's playing. Can you say anything about like how those choices were being made, about how Beyonce to Beyonce and how much that was chosen?
Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't have any Beyonce songs throughout the entire. We have Crazy in Love that comes in every now and then. It's like my entrance music. That's really fun. But let's see. I don't know. Beyonce does a lot of dropping, and she pops and she locks and she does all the things. And I just gave myself the liberty to do that, even in moments when it doesn't necessarily need to happen. I just did it anyway, and Lisa loved it, and that's fun. I don't know.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah.
We don't want to give away too much either, because we want people to be able to come and see the show and all of that. Can you said you're from Connecticut,
Yes.
But you're based in Chicago.
Yes.
You had worked with Lisa before as well, correct?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about like working with Lisa before and what your journey is and how you've gotten here, what you've just done recently, if you've got anything planned in the future as well?
For sure. I met Lisa at DePaul University. That's where I went for my undergrad, where I got my BFA in acting. She teaches the directing students, so I worked with her really through them. And then my senior year, she directed my showcase, which is what we do before leaving school so that people around the country can see what we're about to do and agencies can start to look at us. So I worked with her very briefly, and that's how we built our relationship. And Lisa's always been a champion of me, even from a distance. So her giving me this opportunity, I'm the second youngest in the cast, and that's I don't know, I feel really, really grateful to be here and to be chosen to be in this fabulous role, but being so new to the profession, because it just, it gives me confidence. To be Beyonce, you have to be confident, and this really gave me the confidence to be able to do that. Coming up, I am in Westport, Connecticut. I'm going to be doing Schoolgirls, or the African Mean Girls play, a very, very, very funny show in October. So that's what I have on the horizon. And hopefully some more things will pop up between then and after then.
Amazing, thank you. Hey, Abby.
Hey.
Will you start by telling us sort of, when this idea of a 12th night that's sort of set in Miami, that's about, immigrants and refugees, and then your personal experience being, from Cuba, but also spending time in Puerto Rico. What was sort of your initial reaction to that? Was this exciting? Was it scary? Was it obvious? I've never asked you this question, so I don't know the answer.
We've never talked about it.
What kind of was your response to that?
Well, first, I auditioned without knowing this. I just got the audition for Viola, which is one of my favorite Shakespearean roles. And I was very excited about it. And then when I was in the room, I was told that it would be set in Miami, and immediately I made a connection, like in a split second. Of course, Shipwreck, Cuba, like those stories for me. I did not go through that. I migrated through an airplane, but it does form like a lot of my people, and I thought it was a genius idea. I thought it immediately put Lisa Portis, who I didn't know anyone in the cast, not even the director, but I immediately thought of her as such a visionary, because it's a way of retelling this story for our modern times, and you almost don't have to change anything. It's everything we talked about, the universality of these stories, the human condition, how we keep exploring it, and how we keep connecting to things that were written centuries ago. I think it's a beautiful testament to that. So I was immediately excited. Of course, in my case also, one of our references, right, is Raúl Juliá, which is like that actor from Puerto Rico who kept his accent and who did Shakespeare marvelously, and gave his own music of the language to these incredible words that Shakespeare wrote. So just getting the opportunity, right, to say all these words and play Viola with my own, right, with the heritage that is in my voice, I feel that is an experience that I want to keep having throughout my whole career. And also I relate to Jazzy. I have been acting for 10 years, I think. Yeah, this year it's 10 years. But it's always been in Puerto Rico. Up until last year, I graduated recently from grad school. That's how I came to the United States to live in New York for 4 years. And this is my second professional opportunity, and my first time doing a professional play, a professional Shakespeare play. So it was also very scary at first, but it's been such a wonderful journey. I felt so taken care of.
Yeah, you're being modest. You have to drop the name of where you went to grad school, just for the people to know.
I went to the Juilliard School. They've been giving me a hard time in rehearsals. Like every time I do something, they're like, "Oh, she went to Juilliard. She does that." And I'm like, "Can you stop it?"
Juilliard is one of the premier acting universities in the country, and so for Gabby to kind of be like, "Oh, I just went to grad school," is a bit of a misnomer. So thank you for that. So then, real quick question. So I'm based here in St. Louis. How is Forest Park? How is being in this space? What does it feel like to be sort of in one of the hearts of St. Louis, performing on this play that is very Midwestern town? We're not Puerto Rico. We're not Connecticut. We're not Chicago. What are your initial feelings about that? This can be complicated as well.
First, okay, let's talk about the space. It is my first time, I think, or my second time doing an outdoor play. So to act and have such an expansive space is so lovely. Like to actually talk about the night and have the moon right there. Mm-hmm. That is beautiful. I said this in one of our circle meetings, so it was kind of private, but I'm going to share it. Again, we grapple with vulnerabilities. In my case, it's right, I come from another country. This is not my first language. So I was a little scared. I was like, how are people gonna take it? How are people gonna connect with me, that's something, and at the same time, you're like, yes, of course, we're going to connect. We're human beings, and culture is I think that diversity in culture, I think, is one of the main strengths of our humanity. So that's there too. But I do have to say, and I shared this, the first night, the second night, I have this moment in which I'm actually in the audience. I'm actually downstairs in the grass, and I actually connect to people face to face, and I talk to them, in one of those soliloquies, and everything I've seen, like every face that I've connected with, is so full of love, so full of an open heart, and that has been like a beautiful experience to me. I felt very taken care of by the audience, and also challenged. Like we've even had like call and response, like, oh yeah, and we connect and we clap together, and I think that's been a great discovery, and that's what theater does too. I think it's such a communal experience. So yeah, my experience has been wonderful, and that park is so beautiful.
Yeah, Forest Park is gorgeous. This is a really lovely city. From the first day, everybody on the street was just nice and giving and generous. And Chicago, it's like people can be that. It's not New York, where I grew up near New York, and my mom is from Brooklyn, so I know what it's like to be in New York, and people just tunnel vision, leave me alone. But in Chicago isn't like that, but St. Louis really isn't like that. And I've had also a lovely experience being on the stage, and there's very much energy of, you know what, I can do whatever with, to be expressive and expansive, and everyone's just gonna soak it in and take it all in. I just feel free on that stage. It's liberating to be in an outdoor space like that. And so I'm grateful to be in Forest Park. I think this is probably the best venue I think I've done theater in thus far, just because of how free I feel on stage. And I will say I was a little worried, because Missouri is like the southern Midwest. And so I was a little worried about, I don't know, the energy that we might be confronted with. Like I said, the different genders we have in this cast, and the way that we're taking on the expressive sexuality in the show. And one of the main characters in the show, Dame Toby, is supposed to be Sir Toby. And so we gender swapped, and we have this infamous drunken character on stage played by a woman. And I think people who are Shakespeare enthusiasts might come and might be like, does that even really work? And it does really work, because Ricky is fantastic, and she's also a native of this city, and shows out and is a crowd favorite every single time. So I was a little worried about how people might receive some moments in our show, but it's been lovely so far, knock on wood.
Yeah, Ricky Franklin plays Dame Toby Belch in our production, and she is from the north side of the city, and has grown up in this area, and then is now a professional performer. We also have Cassidy Flynn, who is a local actor playing Andrew Aguecheek. He works in his daytime at City Garden School, helping them out, and does that. Yay, there you go. Come on, City Garden. And then we also have Christina Rios, who's playing a small role, and then a young Webster student, Femi, who's in the show. So there are some local people as well, which I think is also really exciting, that it is local St. Louis actors and performers alongside these amazing people from New York and Chicago, all coming together to kind of put on this production, which I think also provides a lot of interesting dynamics of what people have experienced and what people are seeing, and go from there. Anything that you wish people knew coming to the Glen, coming to the show, about either their experience outside or the show that they're seeing, or a favorite thing that you would like to convey? I'll begin by saying that this is a funny show and we want people to be raucous and enjoy it, right? That it's outdoors and there will be dogs barking and children running, and you should feel free to laugh and express yourself and talk and not feel like you're having to sit quietly and not unwrap your candy too loud or anything like that, right? This is meant to be a sort of free experience of the theater, and we want you to take part in that and enjoy when the people around you are taking part in that as well. That would be my thought. Do you have any?
I'm just going to piggyback right on that because that's what I was going to say. I think people think Shakespeare is supposed to be like, oh, we're going to see the Shakespeare show. And it's like, no, we're going to see a Shakespeare show. It's meant to be fun. It's meant to be just rowdy, honestly. This is a rowdy show. And I know for myself, if people do the kind of call and response nature of things and yell things out. I mean, I've come out on stage and I've had somebody go, ooh, I like her, or the body is giving. And I love that. Just, say things and just have fun with us, because that's what we feed off of. So just don't be scared to be loud and expressive.
Yes to all that. I love that. Oh my God, we do feed off the audience so much. Like yes. Also, I think it's a very funny show. It is filled with music. It is filled with a lot of enthusiasm. And also we didn't shy away through the creative process. We didn't shy away from the actual very complex themes of the play too. Like there is, of course, the story of exiles and the story of leaving something behind and finding yourself on your own in a whole new place. That's there too. The story of unrequited love, how much you can love someone and you feel that it's impossible, and the pain that has, which also has comedy in it, because life is silly and complex, and I think that's all there too. So to see that the huge laughter and the clapping in those moments that are so expressive and wonderful and fun, and to also have the moments of people being moved by the story, that's also something that I am glad that we didn't shy away from that, and I am glad that the fact that it's a comedy doesn't take away from the complexity of the relationships and the everything that we're feeling. It feels so high stakes all the time. So yeah, I like that we did that. And for me, going back to when we talked about hearing the concept for the first time, I mean, it's been a really fun journey and also a hard one. In my case, connecting to migration, to exile, to being separated from your loved ones. My mom is in Cuba still. I see my mom once a year if I'm lucky. And that's something that I've tried to in order to survive, you kind of have to understand it and have it carry on with you, because if not, I'm gonna be crying every single day in my life because I miss her. And it was hard to have to connect to that for the play, But I found it very healing too. I found it very healing to actually bring all that to what we're doing. So, it's all there. There's so much heart, so much fire on stage, and so much generosity. I am very lucky to be a part of this.
Yeah. Just a little bit of historical context. So most theater companies, most nonprofit theater companies in the country are started by a group of artists that want to make theater together. That's how most of the theater companies in the United States have been formed. The St. Louis Shakespeare Festival is actually very different in that what happened is that a group of St. Louis philanthropic business folks were like, we don't have Shakespeare in the Park. Every other major city has Shakespeare in the Park. How do we not have Shakespeare in the Park? And so they formed the organization in order to provide this service. They felt that having free Shakespeare in our beautiful park was an essential part of our community. And so then they pulled in artists to create that. So one of the things that's really interesting about that kind of still reflects to what we do today is that this isn't sort of a labor of love by one person. This isn't sort of driven by a cult of personality of one artist who has gravitated. It is that this city has prioritized creating free art opportunities for itself, and has said we think that that is of value, that free art opportunities in St. Louis are important to us, and so we as a city support that. So we are so grateful for the fact that we can produce this free theater in Shakespeare's Glen in Forest Park every year, because the city has prioritized this value. And then the benefit of that also then is that the city then trusts artists to go make that thing happen however it might make sense for them. And so this year we have this beautifully expansive, racially and gender expansive group of people, and the city says, yeah, great, do that. Like, that's what we want, you know, and maybe it's not what I would have chosen to do, but we believe that this process should happen in our city. We believe that this thing should happen. And I think that that's also what draws so many artists in from around the country, is sort of this feeling of being given the, like you've both expressed, the opportunity to be free and expansive, and that the city has kind of given us the region has given us, you know, kind of carte blanche to do that. I also know that the three of us sitting up here are all acting in this Shakespeare play, but are not necessarily what other people would call like Shakespearean actors. We don't make our money, our living just doing Shakespeare after Shakespeare after Shakespeare after Shakespeare, right? You are going to another contemporary play after this. You were on a contemporary play before this. You've been working in Puerto Rico and like having different things. So myself not being, I work for the Shakespeare Festival, but Shakespeare's not where I kind of dug my teeth in. So I will speak for myself and say that when approaching Shakespeare's language, I have a little bit of fear sometimes and a little bit of trepidation about being like, oh, this is like the best language ever. Like, oh my gosh. And then finding my way in, but I also find it so revealing and open, and finding opportunities to really be like, oh, I don't know that Shakespeare meant for this language to do that, but I can make this language do that. I can find my own way into this language because it has so much flexibility and universality and beauty and complicatedness, but also it doesn't make any sense sometimes. Like, my whole character in the play doesn't make any sense while I'm there. If I was helping Shakespeare write this play, I'd be like, cut this character. He doesn't need to be there. But I embrace that and say, great, I'll take the paycheck and the applause, and I'll be in the play. But how did you approach Shakespeare? How are you approaching Shakespeare? Hang-ups, fears, solutions?
Okay, so I did get Shakespeare training at Shakespeare and Company in Lenox, Massachusetts when I was 19. I was able to be there for a summer, and I was able to do that with them. That was amazing. When I graduated from school in 2021, they asked me to do King Lear there, and I did their Cordelia. That was so scary because all of the actors in Shakespeare and Company are the company, and they've been there for decades, and they've been doing this work as Shakespearean actors. And here I come right out of undergrad, like, I'm just gonna play this powerful woman. And so that was scary, but I will say that this is the hardest thing I've done, I think, since I've started acting in high school. So I guess I've been acting, I don't know how many years, but this is the hardest thing I've ever done, because comedic Shakespeare is even harder than anything else. You have this ye olde English that most people, including myself, do not understand at face value. And then you have the comedy on top of that. Because of how Shakespeare is written, there are no stage directions for, okay, and then put a gag right here, or like, and then do this right here because that's gonna be funny. You have to create it yourself. And I mean, I was anxious the first 2 weeks of rehearsal. I don't know if either of you saw it. I would go home and I would be up until 3 or 4 in the morning going over my lines and calling my other friends being like, what if I put this right here? Do you think people would laugh? And I was just anxious. I was a ball of anxiety because I didn't want to butcher the text, but I also wanted to make it my own. And without giving anything away, I think you'll see how I really sprinkled in some Beyonce throughout some of this language and made it fun. But I think the main takeaway is Lisa, our director, because there's the marriage of Shakespeare and Spanish, there was flexibility to change a little bit of the language because you don't have to buy rights to Shakespeare shows, so you can kind of do whatever you want. And so we were able to change a little bit of the language for the better and make it accessible to everybody.
And also, just to say, historically, that has been what Shakespeare has always been. Shakespeare has always been a text to start with that then people mess with, that people make adaptation to, that for as long as Shakespeare has been performed beyond the original company, it has been something that has been sort of touched on and managed. You know, one of the first productions of Shakespeare in the United States is done by an entire black company in New York City. That there's always sort of these kind of tones of like, let's see what we can do with it. Let's see. This isn't anything new. We're not like suddenly being blasphemous by changing Shakespeare. That's kind of been always the course that's been there. And it does provide a lot of opportunity. I also think that it's so funny that, you know, when you look at Shakespeare's comedies, this is a really great point that you make, that there's these references that he's putting in, these very topical references that, you know, you can see through everything. You know, this is a tangent, but I was rewatching Shrek with my niece and nephew, and I was like, oh, I don't know that they get that reference because, you know, like, that was a very specific time and place. And Shakespeare does the same thing. He's making a very specific joke about hunting dogs. Well, none of us, I mean, I don't know about you all, I don't have hunting dogs, right? It's not something that we sort of have ubiquitously. And so figuring out how to make those jokes then work or adjust them is part of the fun of it in this space, which is exciting. Gabby, how did you approach the Shakespeare of Shakespeare?
I feel like I am the, you know, as some people say, oh, you think Shakespeare is boring or it doesn't work until you get to know him, and I am that in my case. I am that. Like, I remember back in undergrad at the University of Puerto Rico, they did auditions for Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet, and I did not audition. I was like, I don't want to be in that. Like, I thought it was boring and outdated, and I didn't feel like I connected to it until I got to study it. My first way in was in an acting class in undergrad at the University of Puerto Rico with my mentor, Jacqueline Dupre, who a bunch of my generation, we have trained with her. And she really made me fall in love with Shakespeare. So also, you know, the presence of mentors and professors that actually like lead you and guide you and take your hand into these worlds that you get to explore and fall in love with. And I completely fell in love with language. I thought the first thing was how many secrets are in the language. The language is a map. Everything that is in the sounds of the words, how much how much symbolism, how much those antitheses, those forms of expression, like everything. You can find so much juice and richness in everything he's laid out, and you kind of have to be like an explorer, you have to take an adventure into the text. I think that's wonderful. Of course, also the characters. I love the characters, the high stakes, the journeys, the complexity of them, those relationships. I love all that in Shakespeare and how much I connect to it, even though it's centuries apart. I think that makes, and also, you know, with Shakespeare, you know, you step into this role and you kind of know that so many actors throughout history have stepped into those same words and that journey and have grappled with it. And I think it just makes me feel part, like belonging to a community that tracks back to so many years. I think that's wonderful. So yeah, I fell in love with Shakespeare in undergrad. I got to study it and formally and like train further and deeper in it. At Juilliard, we have a bunch of Shakespeare classes, and we do 3 Shakespeare plays in 4 years. So I got to explore that there, and yeah. So when we got here, it was basically, you know, unlocking the language, being present with the other, like feeding off each other's ideas. I think this ensemble is wonderful. Like, you get so inspired. And also with the comedy, in my case, I had an existential crisis like week 3. I was like, I'm not funny. I'm not funny. Like, my character is not funny, or I'm not finding it. I was more like, I'm suffering all the time because I love this person and they don't love me, and I'm on my own, and I miss my brother and I miss my family. and actually it was through just plain belief, and also Lisa being like, Lisa guiding me to also find the fun in it. Okay, we were like, okay, it is a new place. There's that pain, but also there's that excitement. Oh my God, I dressed like a boy. Everyone bought it, and now I'm a gentleman, and playing with that. But the real answer was in previews, when I actually got to hear people reacting to things and feeling that bond, because I mean, laughter, that's why comedy is so special too and so hard. Because laughter, you hear the instant response. Of course, in drama, you can hear the silence. You can feel also the energy of the audience. So it doesn't only have to be out loud. But laughter is such like an instant reaction and such a visceral reaction. So that was really lovely. And the audience is part of the process. That's when you get to discover so much of what you're doing, what works and what doesn't, thanks to the people that you're connecting with from the other side of the room, in the grass, in this.
I think something you said that's so important, that's really a great combination of what's happening in this production is that, and I have heard other people talk about this idea of like cultural competency. Cultural competency is this idea that you don't have to be fully immersed in another culture or whatever, but you have to have a sort of language by which you can approach it. So the short version of this is that when we teach Shakespeare in theater classes and at Juilliard and all these places, we say, hey, this is the year that Shakespeare was born. This is the time that he grew up in. This is the socioeconomic status that he came from. This is the politics of the time. This is how the theater looked. This is how all of this was, because we believe that knowing all that stuff about Shakespeare helps you understand what he wrote. Doing that same thing for artists of different cultures in our current day is also beneficial. That knowing that like Gabby was born in Cuba but went to Puerto Rico and then went to Juilliard helps you then understand the art that Gabby makes, right? And that you want to know more about a culture, and that and like you were saying though too, it seems boring or it seems scary until you fall in love with it, right? And all cultures exist in that sort of way, right? That like, oh, Miami or Puerto Rico or Cuba might seem scary or might seem uninteresting until I fall in love with it, until I'm given time and space to enjoy it and to hear it. And I think one of the things about our production is that it will invite you into the world of Shakespeare's Twelfth Night by having these great stories told, but also the music and the sounds and the language of Latine people will also invite you into that culture and say, hey, welcome to this culture. Welcome to learning about these people. They might seem boring or they might seem scary or they might seem whatever, but if you give them some time, you will warm up to them and fall in love with them in the same way that you know, Shakespeare felt like this, that it was this foreign thing until you learned about it and then you loved it. Same thing with all of these other cultures, all these other expansive gender expressions. If you get to spend time with them and warm up to them, you will find an opportunity to love them. And I think that that's a gift that this production is giving. Does that seem fair?
Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Cool. Last question for you, and then we can kind of wrap up and give ourselves some space for meeting folks and talking. What is your process? We have a show tonight at 8 o'clock. What is the rest of your day going to look like in order to sort of prepare yourself to go and stand out in the hot sun in the middle of Forest Park and say words that are 400 years old? Do you mind inviting us into that process of what that looks like?
Yes. So I stay inside because it's hot and I want to be in the AC as much as I can. So I'm going to be...
Also, just to say, when we arrive at the Glen tonight, we all have air-conditioned trailers that we get to sit in the back and be totally pampered. It's not glamorous, but it is air-conditioned.
Yes. So I will not suffer once I get there until I step outside of the trailer, and then it's like, oh my gosh. But I'll stay inside for all of today, doing just things I have to do in my apartment, and then at around 5:45. Well, 5 o'clock, I'll eat a small dinner. 5:45, I get ready to leave. The show doesn't start till 8. We don't need to be there until 7:30, but I always get there at 6 because I need to warm up my voice, even though we're mic'd the entire show. we have to project, and there's just a lot of, like we've been saying over and over, a lot of expressiveness, and the last thing I want to do is throw out my voice, especially since we have pollen in the air, so it already makes the throat very sticky. So I warm up for about 20 to 30 minutes, and then at 6:30 I start to get into my wig and into my makeup, which takes a long time, and then 7:30 I'm finishing up the makeup. And I don't go on until halfway through Act 1, so I have a little bit more time. But I'm usually just sitting backstage trying to breathe and relax, and then become Beyonce.
I think that's all of us every day, right? We breathe and relax and try to become Beyonce. Any post-show rituals for you, Jazzy?
I take my time to get out of hair and makeup because we just did a marathon on stage. And then usually we go to the bar. That's what we do. Yeah.
Yeah, we're actor stereotypes. That's okay. Gabby, how do you think about getting prepared for this thing?
Okay. Quick thing about me. I used to be a journalist, so acting came later in my life, which means that for the longest time I used to work at a newspaper and write articles and hand them in by 7, and then I would have to go straight into either rehearsal or performance. I say all this because I think I developed a thing of not warming up and like going straight into performance mode, which in this production I found not great because it does take a toll on the voice. But yeah, I feel like all these 10 years, I've sort of like, okay, I need to get prepared. Okay, so 10 minutes, blah, 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 and then I go in. And I think it's a strength to have, right? But also I am trying to like believe in warm up because I think it makes sense. So to answer the question, I just live my life, do whatever until call time that I go to the park and I do fight call, intimacy call, soccer call, because we have like some soccer tricks in the play, and then I put on another thing that I love. I put on my costume, and I don't like to wear makeup, so every time I'm in a production that I don't have to wear makeup, I kind of scream, so I'm not wearing any makeup, so I don't have to, poor thing, I don't have to like go through that, which also shortens the amount of time, but yeah, I go into costume. And I am drinking now, thanks to Esti, our Festi in the play, an amazing artist. Now I'm also like hot water and honey, because they were like, honey, get it. So yeah.
Just a little bit of information. So, in a traditional theater, like if we were doing a show here, the curtain would be closed, and the audience could come in only 30 minutes before time, and we could do all these things. But because we're outside and because we don't have a curtain, you can arrive hours early and be there and kind of watch actors warm up. But every night for the production, there are 2 main moments of fighting, of combat, and the rules are, kind of the expectations for professional theater is that every night before the show, the actors go on stage and walk through that fight to make sure that it is safe every night. That's the fight call that Gabby was talking about. Also in this play, there's lots of moments of intimacy or kissing or hugging or closeness. That also has a rehearsal ahead of time to make sure that the actors are comfortable in that. And then in this play, there's also some moments of soccer juggling done by our Orsino Felipe. That also gets practiced. And so if you come early, you can watch us go through all of these moments on stage and practice these things, because there is no curtain, there is no house to keep you out of, and all of those things. So we're a little bit more open to the process than you might see. So you can kind of see. Also, we don't have a real tight backstage. You can look back and see us walking to and from our dressing rooms. You can see the microphones being put on and the whole process, because we are just out living our lives in Forest Park as best we can. So thank you so much for letting us talk to us. This is our production of 12th Night. It runs up until June 25th, which is a Sunday. That'll be our closing night. We perform every night except for Monday nights. We get a night off then. You can reserve tickets online, or you can show up because it's free. We've got vending by Steve's Hot Dogs. We've also got STL Barkeep serving drinks as well. Or you can bring your own picnic of whatever you want. Some people go real elaborate. Some people just bring Dominoes. Whatever works for them. We encourage it all. Then also to know that we, in the month of August, have a touring production that is a small production of just 6 actors. They go to 24 different parks all over the region. They'll be performing a production of Merry Wives of Windsor, which is another comedy that they'll be doing in many different locations. And then in September, we have a new play in our Shakespeare in the Streets program that will be all about the history of soccer in St. Louis. Now, of course, you can go upstairs and see the exhibit and learn all about soccer in St. Louis, which we highly recommend. It is a beautiful exhibit upstairs. But also then you can come see this play and see a dramatization of all of that performed outside of City Park on 21st and Olive Street in September 14th, 15th, and 16th. All of these programs are free to the public, and we encourage you to tell your friends and bring folks around. But thank you so much for letting us talk to you about this. And thank you, Jazzy, and thank you, Gabby, for being here and spending some of your time with us. Thank you all so much, and we hope to see you in Shakespeare's Glen. Thanks so much.
Thank you.